Cool. I think we're going to get going then. Natalie, Brian, thanks for joining us. Our very first Growth and Co talk. So looking to do this once a month, maybe a little more than that, if the interest is there and we have great people, but just looking to bring together great people in the film industry. Here's Matt. Welcome, Matt. And have talks about, our world as cinematographers, but talk with not only DPs like yourself, but directors like Brian, who's with us, colorist, VFX artist. Mike was talking about doing a talk with key grips and gaffers and first ACs. So just looking to create an hour-long space to have conversations and talk about projects. So tonight we're talking with Natalie and Brian about Lost Bayou, the feature film that they had that just came out, a week or two ago, maybe?
A little longer, I think it was end of August.
Okay, a month or so. But looking to have a conversation with you about it. If you haven't watched it, it's on all the major platforms, so take a look. And Natalie has some BTS imagery on Slack for everyone to check out as well. But let's get started. Just maybe with you guys introducing yourself. Tell us about kind of how you came up, and not only as filmmakers but partners, and just give us a little backstory on you too.
Okay, you go first.
Sure. Me and Natalie are both from a kind of area in Louisiana we call it Acadiana. It's kind of more like a Cajun country area. Myself, I've been working in the film industry since, I guess, early 2000s. I was working in production, whatnot, doing like PA, AD work and stuff like that. And then decided that wasn't for me. So I started trying to make films myself, and I made a movie and it did pretty well. And I was like, all right, well, maybe I should go to film school. Went off to film school, went to the International Film School, Sydney in Australia for 2 years. That's where I learned I wanted to be a cinematographer. And so I shot everyone's film I could over there. I directed 1 or 2 films, but mostly I was a DP over there. Moved back to Louisiana after that, and was working as trying to get work as a cinematographer, but I kept running into the problem I couldn't find directors to work with. So it would end up doing commercial work and just doing ads and things like that, where I would have to direct and shoot. And so I just kept shooting, directing, and then so shortly after we met,
around that time,
and I was still DPing and doing stuff, and Natalie, you
was still kind of acing but starting to shoot DP on my own projects.
And so we worked together a couple times where she AC'd for me as I was doing B camera stuff for a few things, and then one day she said, I'm never doing that again. And so and I got to a point where I was just trying to take directing, I think, a little bit more seriously. And so Natalie was taking DPing more seriously. And so we decided, let's try to just work together like that. And we did our first kind of music video together, and it came out pretty good. We were very happy with it. And I just kind of kept pursuing that. And I DP'd a few things here and there. Still every once in a while, I'll step behind the camera and do that. But most of the time I've primarily concentrating on directing. And couple shorts, did a couple shorts together, then did a lot of commercial work and things like that. And then now it's we decided to try to take our stab at a feature film, and that's kind of what Lost Bayou was. And so it was a natural that we did it together.
And like Brian said, I'm also from a small town in South Louisiana. Just kind of the condensed version of my story is started off at this small TV station in South Louisiana. I was kind of a one-woman band where I was in charge of this little doc-style TV show where I shot and directed and edited and did everything. And that sort of segued into getting on a movie set for the first time, where I started working in the camera department. So I AC'd for a little while, and then actually worked as an assistant editor for a year because of my editing experience, and then kind of went back and started, to really get serious and shooting shorts and stuff and trying to become a DP, and then really pursued that heavily. And then, yeah, met Brian and started to work with him, and then kind of cut to now. So
many years later.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of backstory.
Yeah, we've been together for like 10 years, so it's just been we've like grown a lot together as artists.
Yeah, we used to have a company together. I think I said it on one of the threads. That's how I was able to get a lot of work and a lot of practice. Like in the beginning, our company, we were based in Lafayette, Louisiana, and then we moved to New Orleans, and we did like kind of smaller to medium-sized commercials, and we had a lot of passion projects, whether it's music videos or short films, and so we were able to kind of do a lot that way. And then we kind of outgrew that and
just got tired of running a company.
Yeah, we didn't want to own a company per se in that capacity, and be responsible for all that. We just wanted to be artists, and so when it didn't make sense anymore, we kind of stopped working that way. Kept the LLC, but just like pursued, our paths. But yeah.
Awesome. Nice. So yeah, maybe kind of run into how Lost by You like came to be. What was the story behind writers and you two getting attached to it and developing it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it was I made it with some writer pals of mine that I've been kind of working on a couple features with, and we've done some shorts and stuff together. And it was kind of like we wrote actually 2 other films that we were trying to get made, but they were like the budgetary level on them was like they weren't able to be done for very cheap. And so we tried our best to try to get those movies made and just couldn't figure out how to do it. And then it got after the second one kind of fell apart that we wrote, and it just we couldn't find the money that we need to do it. We were just like, well, what the fuck we're gonna do? Like, we'd like to try to make a movie, but like, no one's gonna give us money. Like, it's just gonna be really hard to find it. So we kind of decided, like, let's write a story that's uses the resources that we have, with like all back home, all the things that we did that we know. I knew I wanted to make a movie that was kind of primarily set in one location, and I knew I wanted it to be a houseboat. And so we kind of started brainstorming there about kind of stories about kind of like a Cajun heritage and things like that, and a very kind of empathetic kind of 2-character story that we can just kind of lock it in one location, but not make it feel like it's kind of one location. That's kind of what the whole journey aspect kind of came from it. And we were just, me and my buddy Hunter, we're just determined. We're like, we're gonna make this movie for like $10,000 if we have to. And that Natalie didn't want to do that, but.
But I was gonna do it.
I was gonna drag her along.
Figure it out.
We were gonna just borrow someone's camera and go make the movie. But so we started at this like kind of like base mentality of like, all right, at minimum we'll do it for like $10,000, sillily, and just go out in the swamp and go make a movie. And then so that was our there, and we knew at least at that level I could do it. So we started scaling up from there. And so we did like. Got in touch with someone, put me in contact with another producer who invested in some films, and she really liked what we were doing, and so she decided to put some money into the film. So raised our budget level a little bit, and then we did a Seed and Spark campaign, and that raised our money a little bit. And then we got a grant that gave us our camera package and a little bit more cash, and so that raised our budget a little bit. And then we had this kind of thing where we thought we were going to get this kind of bigger actor to come in and be the movie, and they negotiated some fees, and then it worked out where then something happened where they couldn't do it. But then our main producer decided to keep the money in that they were going to do and let us just still make the movie the way we want to make it. So that raised it. So all in, we had about $90,000 kind of to like make them, like just to make production, just to make the movie. And then so our thing was, we didn't know what we were going to do for post yet. Luckily, I've been editing for like 15, 20 years, so I knew it was like I'm going to edit the movie, and so just like, let's just get it going and then we'll see what we can do. And so that's just kind of where we just kind of went with it. And just, I mean, we had a lot of family, a lot of favors, and most of the crew worked for like minimum wage that were getting paid, but some people were there, working their hearts out, like Spence over here. He was. Yeah,
and we have a crew member, Spence and Man.
Yeah.
He helped us out in G&E.
Yeah, He was out in the cold ass swamp.
And how much did we end up getting for posts, or just all in? What did?
Well, the post happened after we shot the film. I put together a quick edit for it, and we got accepted into the IFP, which is the Independent Film Partners projects. And so they kind of foster and kind of like they take first time directors like between 5 and 10 people, and they help kind of guide the film in post production. And so it was a huge deal to kind of get.
It's a lab essentially.
Yeah, it's like a lab. It's like on par with like the Tribeca or Sundance labs. And so they kind of really helped us kind of pair us with some mentors, really gave us a lot of good notes, and kind of helped us kind of put together a strategy to go get more money. And then we started putting everything together to go raise. We figured we needed another $100,000 to kind of properly finish the movie, like color it properly, do proper sound mix, proper score, like really kind of just go all out with fixing a lot of the things that we had to like skim out on a production. And our main producer didn't want to give up their share of the film, so they ended up just kicking in another $100,000 to see it finished. I think it was by that time we knew we were going to get into like a pretty big festival. We were talking between, it was like, we thought it was going to be Sundance, but it ended up not happening. So Tribeca quickly kind of scooped in and said they would be our premiere. So
very cool, nice. And how long was the process from like original writing to actually principal?
I think they wrote the script from talking about the idea to having a script was about a workable script to make was about a year. Okay. And then it was almost about a year after that to raise the funds to get it. It's almost like from the day my buddy Hunter gave me the script, like the first draft of the script that we were going to work on, was almost a year to the day to like we went into production. Nice. And then it was almost a year for post-production with it as well too. So it was a good like 3 years to kind of get it done, and then another year and a half to kind of get the movie released, which was the whole other thing. So a lot of learning that.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's dive into the actual story itself. Maybe just give us like a quick overview, byline for the film itself.
It's about a father and daughter reconnecting over this mysterious dead woman he finds in the swamp that he thinks is his dead wife. And so his drug addicted daughter decides to kind of travel with him, where he wants to bury this woman in his family plot. So she tries to stick around with him to change his mind, and they end up kind of rekindling their kind of like broken relationship and kind of healing each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so dive into, maybe we'll just start with you, Brian, in terms of like director perspective. Talk about the story and kind of the main themes, and like from you even being a part of the writing process, like how you wanted to bring those major themes to the visuals. And obviously being kind of in your hometowns, you already knew locations in the houseboat, you already mentioned that earlier, but start to talk about those major themes and how that kind of played into the visuals that you eventually were able to capture.
Well, we started with the idea of like locations and kind of like where we wanted to be and whatnot. And I knew that the setting was like, that was going to be the backdrop of the story we wanted to do. But we knew we wanted to do a story that was, not necessarily like a horror film or anything like that. It's like we weren't really thinking of kind of profitability of the thing. We just were trying to tell like a story we're interested in. And I'm always interested in very like deep human dramas, and so like the idea of like healing was really important to us. Empathy, faith was like something I kind of wanted to explore a little bit, because growing up in the Deep South, like religion's a very kind of integral part of like the community and whatnot. But I didn't want to make a faith-based movie, but something that at least deals with the idea of what faith means to myself and maybe other people. Not necessarily in a God-fearing sense, but just like the idea of what the word could possibly mean. And, just in overall kind of like struggle and reconnection and what kind of like family and stuff can do to heal old wounds. And that was like kind of where we started with everything. And that's kind of what's the initial questions we were trying to explore or answer, I guess.
For sure. Cool. Yeah, so Natalie, maybe take those themes and kind of whenever you were brought into the process or started reading the drafts of the script, like what visually were kind of the first notes that you were starting to write down or think about, or I mean, being from the same area, like you knew the visuals from growing up there. Like talk a little bit about that, just the visual language that was already maybe inherent there.
Yeah. Well, I guess in our first talks, when I talked to Brian about the script for the first time, I knew, or he knew, that he wanted to make a very immersive and subjective movie. So, perspective was really important. Perspective is always important, but it was something big that we talked about, and how perspective and how showing perspective could really inform emotion, and that particular emotion of empathy, and because that was a really big one. And so how does the audience gain empathy for Gal and for Pop, and how is Gal progressively gaining empathy for Pop through this story, and how do we show that? So lensing was a big deal, as it always is, but focal length and subject distance from camera was a huge deal. We started to talk about handheld. Brian was like, I know I want this movie to be primarily handheld, and I completely agreed, and it felt like that. And it was kind of a two-pronged thing, because we wanted that immersive experience. We wanted to be subjective. We also wanted to be very reactive with the characters, but not in a docu way at all, in more of an empathetic way. And Tav, you're right, we kind of coined that term, empathetic operating. So it's just to give that very subjective perspective most of the time. And that doesn't mean we're never objective, because we do have those objective moments. But yeah, we talked a lot about being handheld. We watched Children of Men was a big influence for operating, and that camera work. And
just the efficiency and how they
the efficiency
how
of
they cover
coverage.
scene.
Yeah.
They're known for big oneers, but
yeah, and we hate the word coverage, because coverage just reminds me of just like that, that template of just master shot, wide shot, and close-ups. So it was about how do we be most efficient? How do we do this, and it's not just for the sake of doing a one or a long take or whatever, but if it worked, then great. So at times the camera would become autonomous. And so it would go in that kind of objectivity, and then come back to the subjective perspective. So we talked a lot about that stuff. Yeah, and then we, one of the benefits of being married is, we got a lot more time in pre-production, because we could just talk about this whenever. So we got to go out to the houseboat that we actually shot in, so we shot this in January of 2017, 18. And that September before, we rented out the houseboat for a weekend and just started sketching on a DSLR, and just started just exploring how we could shoot on a houseboat that small, practically.
I was acting out every character.
Yes. I love that. Any rules or restrictions you kind of put to the visual language once you actually move closer to principal?
Yeah, we shot primarily on the 25 millimeter. We shot on the Cooksby Pancros for the most part. We also did use for the memories and flashbacks. Those were in the Lumos anamorphics. So primarily the Pancros on that 25 mil most of the time, just to give that feeling of being right there with the characters. You'll notice that we rarely had overs, dirty coverage. Mm-hmm. It was mostly clean, except for two scenes when Gal and Pop were actually connected, and that was during the resurrection scene, when she finally came over it, and really started to have more empathy for Pop and understand what he was trying to do. And at the very end, when she goes to leave and they say goodbye on the dock of the houseboat, and that's in two overs. So those were some of our rules. And then also the 40 mil was used
On some coverage
On-
things, yeah.
on some coverage, just depending on.
There wasn't a lot of
scenes were-
movement between the characters and the blocking. We'd pop on the 40s.
Yeah, and if we wanted that, that extra fall off on the depth of field,
Yeah.
to make them feel kind of a little more isolated or whatnot, we would go on the 40.
We're always trying to be on the inside of conversations with what was happening.
Yeah, always on the inside. Even on one scene, the scene where Pop is going through the different rings and trying them on the dead woman, and then the stranger comes in the room. We actually shot that scene twice during production. The first time we kind of escaped ourselves and just got, for some reason, it was just such a small space in that little area of where the bunk beds were. And we found ourselves outside of the conversation, and we looked at the footage that night and we're like, this is just not working.
It wasn't the language.
It wasn't within the language, and it wasn't the time to break the rule, because there are the times to break the rule. There are times we should have broken the rule and we didn't. But luckily we were able to kind of tweak the schedule and reshoot it. And it was not so much better.
Let's talk about that real quick. Like when you said you should have broken the rule, like when would you have?
Yeah. So everything ended up being 100% handheld, and there are a few wider shots that I wish we would have done on sticks. We should have done on
she
sticks.
said it on set. And I was like, no, it can't be. It has to be all handheld and going back into footage. I was like, man,
it's getting dogmatic with it.
I was like, this would be really nice if this was blocked off on these kind of more objective, wider shots. But I think they should have.
Yeah,
they
it was like a handful in the movie that should have been. I don't think it makes or break, but it's just that, and I look at it and I'm like, I wish it would have been, trying to think of what else. But I think, everything else really felt good handheld.
Yeah, and it was also goes back to that efficiency thing that we were talking about as well too. It's like, this was a $90,000 film that we shot in 13 days.
Yeah.
And so we had to, you're shooting, 15 pages a day of dialogue between people. And so we had to find a way to we could, we don't have time to set up track or set up anything like that. You have to it's almost theater. They're going to be going through these lots of lines each day. And so you have, Natalie has to light the scene, but and for them to be able to play, and that camera just has to be able to roam and kind of go with where they want to go. I don't think we set marks, not once, and they just gave everyone a lot of room, spent a lot of time blocking the scenes out so that we can get a good sense of movement with
with camera too.
Yeah, with camera and them, and so they we get the blocking kind of going, and then the camera would kind of go with it. And a lot of times we'd have to save time and energy. We'd have to shoot the scene from top to bottom, since we're inside the circle, you can be okay, we're going to shoot the whole scene from this perspective, from there, and just moving, doing the whole thing. Then we turn around and shoot the other side, just do the whole thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the actors, they really found it, especially Dane, Pop. He's a theater actor. He found it amazingly freeing to do something like that. Terry struggled with it a little bit at first, but really kind of got into it. I think she found it was a lot easier to just let go and be very kind of just with it a lot more. It wasn't, there was hardly any just breaking this, stopping, getting this moment, stopping, getting this moment, stopping, getting this moment. There was a lot of just kind of we're running and shooting the thing a lot. And the fact that, spend a little bit more time kind of lighting it better and blocking it, and it allowed us to do a lot. And I think that's why the performances kind of, I think are pretty good, because they just literally had to be in the scene with the whole time. And we were very kind of loose with the script as well too, where we can change it up as long as we're kind of staying on tracks somewhat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Real quick, let's hit the rest of the gear, just because that was asked a few times in terms of camera body, filters, anything else you used.
Yeah. So Alexa Mini, Cooksby Pancrose, 85% of the film, Lomo Anamorphics, all the camera stuff. Yeah. And I didn't do any filters, any soft filters or anything. What were you gonna say?
Almost a whole movie shot on the 25 millimeter.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I think there's only one shot on the 18
And we
and
regretted
another,
it.
and we regretted it. And then another shot on the 85 and we regretted it. We should, and like the 40, we did a few on the 40 and we were like, okay, that works. But the 25, 40 was kind of where it was. But it just kind of like, once, if you're, I think if you're so kind of like stuck to, like you have those very strict rules with it. When you start breaking it, like with like go from 25 into 18, you're just like, just didn't look right.
Yeah. In this particular world.
Yeah.
And then lighting wise, I didn't have much. Our biggest light was an M40. Yeah. And we had 2 M18s and maybe a couple jokers. I think that's it. Maybe an Astra.
I don't want much.
That's pretty much it.
It was a small
some
space.
grip stuff. Yeah, really small space. So yeah, not a huge G&E package. Again, this is a tiny budget. And the only reason why we were able to get the camera stuff is because we got a grant from Airy Rental.
Yeah,
so,
they donated the whole camera package.
And I would normally test lenses, but we didn't because we got this grant and there wasn't an Airy Rental location anymore in New Orleans. I think the closest one was Atlanta, and so there just wasn't time for me or money to like fly there and test and for them to like ship all kind of things. And so I had shot a music video on the Cooksby Pancros like that year prior, and
I love the way it looks.
Yeah, he loved them and I love them, and I was like, I got to shoot a film on these, and so we knew that. And then and then it was just like researching anamorphics and just kind of going off with what I researched, and I think those were the right decision for the memory sequences.
Yeah, they're good handheld lens because they're so compact and they just make it easier to like get in tight spaces with it.
The Pancros, not the Lomos.
Yeah, not the Lomos. Lomos were Lomos were pain in the ass with it.
Yeah. Let's hit the G&E side of things a bit more. You shared some of the BTS of lighting through the windows, and just talk about being on that boat itself. And I had already got mentioned in the comments, there was no set for the interior, like you were actually on the boat the whole time. So kind of talk us through that, the physical piece of lighting and dealing with that.
So it was all about lighting the space. I never had a unit inside the houseboat. Well, the only time I did was one time, and I think I included a photo of this. We did a lighting gag with a joker, and we got light into a pan of water and did some refraction stuff on the wall. But that was it. So everything was window pushes for the day interiors, or the practical gas lantern for the night interiors and exteriors. And so what was your question? Sorry, just the setups?
So just talking about living on that boat too, because I know there were a lot of day exteriors too.
So for the day interiors, most of the time we were able to shoot those. So narratively, as you know, we watched the film, that the houseboat is supposed to be kind of just docked in the middle of nowhere, just like 360 water, like in the swamp. So we had to, practically about 90% of the time we were able to shoot with the houseboat docked, like on an actual dock. So that meant that one side of the houseboat was like right along the dock that we could put gear on, but the other side was still water. The other three sides. Yeah, so the other 3 sides were water. So I had a party barge style boat on that water side that I could put lights and grip stuff on. And so that was good that we were able to shoot it that way. And then and then the night stuff, we were able to shoot it docked and just face out to the water. We had to turn the boat a couple times just so it could be oriented in the right way. And then when it was out in the middle of nowhere, when we'd see too much, that was all just natural. I couldn't bring anything out there, so it was but we very strategically planned all the exteriors to time of day, lots of blue hour, lots of magic hour,
moving the boat towards
the boat just to face east or west, just depending on the time of day that we were shooting. So that was very, very important.
That's awesome. Talk about I was my head was going a little bit more towards like references again. Like when I was watching it, especially the exterior stuff, like mud became a reoccurring thought of just the visuals. But like what else, and you talked about Children of Men in terms of operating, what else did you reference for the film as a whole, whether it was
Yeah.
the cinematography or just the themes?
Yeah. A lot of photography. William Eggleston's photos were a big influence. And I can show you a particular that we actually based the LUT off of. But it was like Eggleston meets Renaissance paintings. So a lot of Rembrandt and stuff like that. So it was like how to fuse those, like, you know, like an Eggleston oil painting was kind of the approach.
Yeah.
And then two local photographers to the Chaffalaya Basin, which is the name of the swamp area, Greg Gerard and Cece Lockwood. We studied their photos a lot too. Can't think of any other, we didn't really look at any other films.
Yeah, I mean, that movie Mud was like a kind of a little bit of it, but that was more just like the way the location could possibly
Yeah,
look.
it's like, okay, similar location, but
it was not much for lighting, it was more for just visual language and like
but the lighting really came from those oil paintings, like especially for the
inside the
day interiors and night interiors too. But yeah, I can pull up, I can do a share screen and show you the Eggleston photo. Okay, so, okay, do y'all see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was just a little palette that I made. That top right Eggleston photo was like the kind of thesis photo and that the LUT was made off of. Yeah, so I made these palettes just in pre-production and shared them with the production designer and costume designer. And yeah, we all collaborated very, very closely. Another one and I can talk more about that. Here's an interior one, interior houseboat. And then we specifically wanted to shoot in the winter time. We didn't want too much green in the environment. You know, any green would just really be in clothing or just like in the color itself, or, you know, in the production design, but we wanted the swamp to feel very brown and dead and pretty desaturated, and just to reflect, you know, that one of the themes of death and grieving.
I really wanted that kind of in a swamp in the winter time. It has a very like blue skies and brown water and brown trees. So there's like this like blue to brown gradient that we tried to kind of like make throughout the whole film.
And yeah, since we're on it, what is this one? Oh yeah, we looked at that. We did some costume tests. So it was me and Brian and production designer Matt and Megan, our costume designer, all went out to the houseboat. And so this was actually another houseboat. It wasn't the one that we shot on, but it was the color of what we wanted the hero houseboat to be. So we kind of but it wasn't painted yet. So we just took our test in front of this one, but we would try different color jumpsuits on for pop with Brian modeling. And, you know, ended up going with the navy one. We felt this tan one was just blended in. It was this too monochromatic feeling.
Yeah.
And the house was already very warm, and I knew, you know, my light was already going to be warm. And so I think this would have just felt a little muddy.
And it was too close to skin tone too, as well.
Like fair,
and inside the houseboat was brown.
So that nice, like deep navy blue just felt like, it was just nice. It felt better just to add a cooler tone.
And Gal had kind of a tan jacket on a lot of the time too, with that contrast.
Like exactly. And then when we saw this one, we're like, okay, that's way too monochromatic with all the dead grass and stuff.
I think Gal's wardrobe was based like opposite off of Pop. I think the main decision was to choose, because he wears the same thing pretty much. Well, they both do, but that outfit was something we knew that it was going to be, because that's kind of like a quintessential kind of Cajun man wears that, we call it the Cajun tuxedo pretty much. those jumpsuits, and
Yeah.
so we knew that it was going to be something to that effect. We just didn't know what color it was going to be. I know that there was some concern of him wearing blue and the houseboat being blue and whatnot, but I think it was just there was enough. There's so much brown and dead all around. I think if he would have worn some kind of like tan or brown, it just wouldn't be too much. So just kind of rolled the dice, and I think it worked pretty good.
Yeah. And then so me and the production designer had so many talks about, I think someone had a question about that, like in terms of like curtains and all of that. But yeah, I was very specific on the curtains that I wanted, specifically shears or double shears, because I knew I wanted that to double break our diffusion. And also we had to kind of blow out the windows because we couldn't give away that we were docked and it had to be out in the middle of nowhere, but we didn't want to blow it out in a gross way. I wanted to just be a nice subtle fall off. So those sheer curtains do that beautifully. And then I wanted to have the layers. So I think he layered, like some of the windows had like double sheer and then like maybe like a quilt or just something thicker on top. So I wanted the ability to shape the light with, instead of flags all the time, just using curtains. So sometimes they'd be like halfway open or just one layer. And so we just kind of dialed that in just depending on what we wanted. And then wallpaper. So the color of the walls before when we scouted were like this salmon color. It just didn't work. So we wanted something very textured, very aged, very worn and weathered and waterlogged. So Matt just like hand painted this wallpaper and made it feel just the perfect amount of patina, and that's what
you have the frame grabs of the wallpaper.
They have, let's see. They have something with wallpaper.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time. He went above and beyond with kind of what he was trying to do with everything. I mean, so much of his work was put up his wallpaper and then just aged everything to make it look like it's been forever. I mean, part of it, like Matt was from the area as well too, so he knew, he knew what these places look like as well.
I think so. This one doesn't have the wallpaper. So this did he paint this one? Yeah.
He kind of like, this was kind of like just a bright massive yellow. And so he went and kind of like aged the yellow in it. So
and you could see around this like light switch, he did aging there. Put up that cross and the wallpapers like in the main living room part. Let's see.
Yeah.
I don't think I have one that really shows it in these.
Yeah, that picture. Josh, I don't think you have that one. There's not many.
Yeah.
Throw it on there later, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about taking the tones and kind of the visual as a whole all the way to color and what that process was like for you. Who colored it and kind of where did you push it once you were in post?
Yeah. So like I said, so Alan Gordon was a colorist. So I worked with him in pre-production to create that LUT. And I found and we just had the one LUT while shooting. And then I found that was like a little too warm, like after the fact. So we just kind of cooled it off a little bit, but still kept the warmth. And then added just a tad more of green to the shadows and a little bit of the mids. But other than that, it was pretty close to, to what we shot. So that was, I think we had 8 days of color. And we were there the whole time. And we really got, just enough time to just, really take our time still and, do all of the very detailed work. And I don't know if you have any other specific questions.
That's great. Was there any VFX? Did you paint anything out, or was all
some stuff?
A porta potty?
Yeah, there was it's like background cleanup stuff that we just like some things that just were surprises on the day that we just couldn't move, and so we go back and just take out a porta potty in the background of like the ending shot.
And my reflection one time on the houseboat porch sliding glass door.
Yeah. But besides that, just nothing really besides just like, let's take this out the background or something. They're very, very small things.
Yeah. Very cool.
The moon in the scene, that was a fake moon. I don't think the moon gets that big.
Yeah. Talk real quick. and maybe both from like director and DP perspective, about just like your favorite moments and or emotions of the film. Like, what were you most proud of or excited to see actually come through in the final film, in the, you know, in the final edit?
I'd say maybe for me, I think my favorite moment probably was, and I didn't really even know it really was till the very end, till we got to post-production, was like the end scene at the dock where they're saying goodbye. Because it was like, you know, it's my first time shooting, like directing a feature length film of like, you know, a hour and a half character journey from beginning to end, and, you know, them starting at one place and ending at another at a completely different way, and shooting it so fast and so crazy and everything. And when we finally, you know, when we shot that scene, it felt really right. And then when you get into post-production, you can kind of see everything kind of like sequentially kind of paying off, like working and everything. You know, definitely have to shovel some things to make it work, but to see that like I do something where it's like you can actually see, like, track a character's journey throughout the whole thing. I thought that was, yeah, that was probably my favorite thing about it. It's like oh cool. I was like, oh, I think I did this. It's not just, it didn't feel like to me that it was just like just random character kind of stumbling through this thing. She actually ended up in a different place than she began. You can kind of track the journey.
I think I have a few. One favorite scene is the snake bite scene, when just kind of all the way from the beginning of that sequence, or that part of the movie, when Pop and Gal get interrupted by the woman crying for help because her husband, you know, got bit. And so from them leaving the houseboat, Gal just kind of like feeling like a little trapped, like, oh shit, now I'm stuck, like I can't leave him now. So she's like forced to go on this journey. And then that's kind of where things start to really turn for her. But it's just like really, you know, has a nice crescendo. I love how it was cut. Yeah. And then, you know, once we get to the snake bite man's house, Pop, you know, does his thing, and then Gal comes in, and how that, right before Gal comes in, she has just that moment in the boat, you know, just thinking like, should I leave? Okay, I'll go inside. And then we intercut to the memories of her mom. Yeah, I like that one. And there was another one, it's a really small scene, but I just love how it came out because it's just so simple and quiet. It's when Gal goes into the bedroom for the first time when she's alone, and she checks on the dead woman's body just to see for herself. And that's kind of like the first inkling as to maybe she'll come around, you know, because she's like, just, you know, trying to investigate for herself, and like, what is Pop see in this? But it's just really simple coverage, and it's just very intimate and kind of creepy. And I don't know, it's just really nice.
Yeah, I do have I have another one too, and this is something I'm kind of really proud of throughout the whole thing as well too. Is like, we did an awful lot of blue hour stuff in this movie. I feel like it was like the running joke at the end of every single day. We had to say, like, all right, say, well, what's happened at the end of the day? Oh, like, blue hour scene, this blue hour scene, this blue hour scene. Just because, if any of y'all shoot blue hour, it's a mad dash.
10-minute window.
It's a mad dash to get something, to like be prepared for it and to execute it. And we did it an awful lot. I really love this scene when she comes out. It's like her first night on the boat, and after she comes out and have a cigarette, and she goes stand on the edge of the houseboat looking out over the water, and then she walks down to the edge and spies on Pop through the window watching him pray. It was just like, it was a very, just like, I just love those like kind of quiet scenes like that. They're just kind of like very simple. And I just remember like, it's a mad dash to shoot it, but it, you know, you watch it play back and it just feels like we had all the time in the world, and it just feels like very peaceful and calm and everything. And that was kind of our cheat from all our nights that we were trying to do. Yeah. So we just didn't have enough lights or anything to shoot nighttime. So we tried to shoot as much blue hour stuff as possible. And it just kind of, it adds production value without costing anything. It's like stress.
Yeah.
if you when they pull the guy out of the water too, like that.
Yeah.
For a few minutes.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it over and over. You just gotta be fast, and everyone, like, you gotta. I think that's like one of the few times I'm yelling on set is that we're like, oh, come on, get it, go it again, do it. Just trying to get it, and everyone just gets focused and kind of do it. But it's well worth it. I think it takes a lot of coordination with everyone on the team to pull off those blue hour stuff, just because they're just. And it worked with our language too, because like we're shooting so much just combined coverage type things or whatnot, or letting scenes kind of run. So it kind of works to our advantage a lot.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. We're going to get to a couple more questions from some of the members real quick, but my last question was just, especially because Natalie, how many features have you shot at this point? Is this one, or have you done a couple?
Shot 4.
Okay. So 4 for you, and then Brian.
Wow.
Like, talk about what walking away from Lost Bayou, like what's like one big learning takeaway as a filmmaker, DP, director? Like what are some of the big things you really walked away with that you'll take to the next one?
How, letting the actors have freedom is huge, and how performance is everything, or it's just not, it's a big thing. And guess how, and I was already, kind of like lighting spaces before, but just that was kind of just a reiteration of like, I really love doing that. And, I think it can, just because it gives the actors, so much space and not just boxing people in where they can't move. Also, what's another takeaway? This project was really special. My first feature was quite a disaster, which I don't really talk about much, but that was a whole learning experience, and I'm glad I did it. But this was just a more of a family, just a film family coming together. It was 100% labor of love, passion project, and just a special experience. And everyone who was there wanted to be there, even no one was getting paid their rate properly, but they believed in the story, and they brought their A game every day, and a positive attitude, and that's the ticket, and yeah, I don't know if that was a takeaway, but like that was just a good thing. And not every, and not every film is like that. So you really have to cherish those times, because they can be really hard, and you can have certain expectations of how maybe a project is going to go, and it maybe doesn't pan out that way. And, yeah, but trying to think of something else, like a lesson learned. I'll keep thinking if you want to talk.
I learned all the lessons. I mean, I shot a feature film before, and it's like, it's not the same. It's like directing is completely different after doing both. Yeah. And I'm lucky that we have like a very good, such a shorthand communication with everything. And also I think too, it's just like, we were able to achieve a lot because it's like, I think Natalie heard what I wanted to do with it, especially with the actors and giving them a lot of freedom. But I also had her back a lot with visually not letting us get into a situation that was going to look like crap. Yeah. Especially with the long blocking and things like that. It's like if they were going to go somewhere that was going to look bad, make her look bad, make the movie look bad, I tried to help kind of steer things away. So a lot of kind of the visuals of what we're doing is like, I was watching her back and making sure that I wasn't going to put her into a corner that she can't, I've worked on a lot of films as well too, and you see that often where you get kind of put into a corner where there's not much you can do to kind of make a scene look good. So yeah, we tried to kind of like, she's because we're so close, we have a lot of, she's very open. She's like, hey, if you do this, I can't, it's like, it's going to look like crap. I can't do this. And so I'll be like, okay, well, what can we do to kind of work with it? And we had a lot of, we're looking out for each other a lot, trying to do it. Because I think it was important for us to make a really pretty movie as well as a very kind of honest movie. But
that also comes in handy. Like I notice, every time I work with directors who used to be DPs, it's like that's a huge thing. They always have you back, and that's helpful, when it comes to those moments. Yeah. Yes. One specific thing I learned was was just, and this just comes like, I'm so back and forth sometimes with Hayes, you know, and
Yeah,
and it was just kind of like the final straw for me. Like if don't open that can of worms if it can't be done properly and controlled properly. And so, and that's something that I kind of cringed, like, you know, it's inconsistent, because it was like, you know, my gaffer on it, or, you know, somebody from our department, you know, it wasn't, it wasn't like a dedicated special effects person, you know. And for those longer dialogue scenes, you know, it's hard to keep consistent. So we tried to do as much as we could in color to just maintain a consistent contrast. But yeah, that was one thing.
Yeah. Allie was asking about the process of working with your husband, challenges, balance, work life, or work versus home life. Her fiance is also in the industry, so I'd love to hear more about nurturing a relationship and maintaining careers within the industry.
Yeah, I think overall, I think it's a great thing that we get to work together and that we're both in the industry and we can just talk about things, you know, whether it's a job that we're doing together or if it's like a job that I'm thinking about taking, and we can talk about it and stuff like that. But yeah, you do have to be pretty, you know, on top of it, of like, you know, finding balance, because we do get caught up in just working and just talking about work. And so we have to set aside time and make sure we're like, okay, let's just go do something for fun and let's not bring up work. And especially while we're in pre-production or something, you know, it's that's hard. It just becomes all consuming. But we love what we do so much that it ends up being something that we talk about a lot, which I think is fine. But like it's just a constant. We have to constantly kind of remind ourselves, like, okay, let's do something that's like not film.
Well,
you know,
when you're in production, it's really great because it's, you know, when you're in production, it's all immersive. You're just like, especially if you're shooting on location somewheres, you go home and you're still living with it, and you go back. You don't really turn it off ever. And so for us, it was like what was great about this, and which is I'm excited about the next project as well that we do together, and she'll do it. It's like we're talking about shots going to bed. You know, like we're in bed, like winding down for a minute, talking about the shots for the next day. And just kind of like have a laptop open, kind of tweaking the shot list for the first AD a little bit, and just kind of saying like, you know, it's like today we noticed this or something like this. What if like tomorrow when we're doing this scene, we do something like this? And so it's like that communication is like,
it's fantastic.
It's insane communication to be doing, and it's like you can't.
And the same thing, like I mentioned earlier in prep, it's like we got to really, and that was like the key of this low budget, just having so much prep. But just we had all of that time, you know, way before official prep started, you know, just to start just having those talks, and we broke down the script, which took about 2 weeks, you know, scene by scene, and really just, you know, analyze the hell out of every scene and informed our visual language, you know, from that. And that was huge. And that was a big takeaway for me. It was that process was kind of something I was already doing with short films, just kind of informally. But on Lost Bayou, we kind of like, Brian was like, I want to ask ourselves like a set of questions for every scene. And, you know, having to do with perspective and, you know, what emotions the characters are experiencing and what is the scene about, and subtext and symbols and all that. So each and every scene, you know, asking ourselves those questions. And that's something that I, you know, like I said, was kind of like doing just like casually, you know, but now it's become more like a formal process, I guess, that, you know, I've done with every feature since. And, you know, and I adapt it to the personality of a director, you know, it just depending on how they like to work. But in some way, shape, or form, we're talking a lot about the script, and we're talking a lot about each scene.
Perspective and symbols.
Yeah, perspective and just kind of the nuts and bolts of each scene are like the most important.
Yeah, sometimes it's like the hardest question that doesn't get asked sometimes. Like, what's the scene actually about?
And a lot of times when you ask that, directors will be like, oh wait, do we actually need this scene? You know what? I don't think we need this scene right then and there, you know, 86. Or this moment is just combined with the prior scene or something.
Yeah, it's like, oh, these two scenes are the same scene. Let's just do one of them or combine this or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn to be a lot more efficient, really asking all the questions I would just like to ask questions a lot, and I'll question a lot of things until we kind of get into it. And it's even kind of like working with the actors. It's like I'm more kind of questioning them and letting them, like, creating these, like, we're questioning things to drudge up answers, and so that's where the process kind of came from.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Love that. Brian, do you have the next film then? Are you working on it right now?
I had one. We were like in the Sundance like last month and everything, and just
COVID
kind of happened. It kind of fell apart, and it's a lot bigger movie. So it's kind of going through a thing where I'm now working on something else. So we'll see. It's got put to the side. We'll see if it might have a chance to kind of pop back up again next year, but I'm trying to I'm working on something else now. It's hard to find something. I'm very picky with what I like. I had like I don't know, like few little small film offers, like a Lifetime, where it was really horror film, and I'm very picky. Me and Natalie are both very picky on the jobs we do. So that's another thing about being in a relationship as well too. We get to talk to each other about the projects we do, and a lot of times we'll call out the bullshit of the project. It's like, this is going to be a fucking nightmare. Don't do this or don't do that. You have to take some things to have money, but if it's going to be like a passion project, especially like directing a feature, just like broke me. It's such a hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and so I don't want to just do it for something I don't believe in. So we'll see.
Yeah, very cool. We're at 10 o'clock Eastern, at least. Any like final thoughts, things that came up even in the questions earlier on Slack, things we didn't quite hit, you want to touch on real quick? We hit a lot of stuff, but
yeah, nothing's coming to mind. If someone wants to chime in, if there's a question that we didn't.
Any big questions, Mike? Reyes, you got any questions?
Oh, I remember when someone asked about like blocking.
Oh yeah.
And what was it about, like light?
How you lit for the blocking or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I may have answered it before with just with everything, and I think it was a specific question for the day interiors. But like I said, it was all window pushes, so all the units outside. And the idea was just to create a single soft source lighting the space. So the houseboat was, like I said, just had windows on either side, and then next to the front are just one big sliding glass door. So we would just, depending on which side of the room the action was taking place, that would be where the light was coming from, and the other side was either curtains closed, or maybe there was like a hard pop of light coming from the other window, and the curtains were like just almost all the way closed. And we also had mini blinds too on some of those, so maybe those were like almost all the way closed with a hard pop light at the bottom. But because the houseboat was pretty small, and it was single source, it was just very the light was pretty rappy, so like anywhere they stood, you really had a nice angle of Rembrandt almost everywhere, along that line of action by whatever line of windows that they were in. We didn't really use marks at all. It was just all.
Like when we had Tweety was our first AC, and he's just spectacular at just like binding it. There's only like a few focus buzzes in there, so it's like it's bigger for never having any marked actors. Just kind of like let them just kind of do what they feel needs to be done.
I see another question. How did the budget limit you for worse or better? I think in terms of the better, we had to think outside the box, and we had to get creative. So I think, a lot of times when you don't, those restrictions become creative solutions. And yeah, I think that allowed for a lot of magic to happen because we couldn't control everything. So it was about like setting time aside for those blue hours and magic hours and all of that stuff. It was about like, writing a script around a houseboat, because that's what we had access to. I think a lot of good came out of the low budget. For worse, we couldn't pay everyone what they deserved.
No days.
Yeah, we only had, this was like one of the coldest winters in like 30 years in South Louisiana. So the first day of production, it snowed. So we lost that day. So we were down to like,
yeah, I think it was originally a 15-day shoot, and we lost 2 days to weather.
Yeah, or a day and a half or something like that.
Yeah, and so it just, if we had more money, I think the only thing we would have done is maybe try to like more days, maybe pay people a little bit more. There's no way we could. I mean, it takes a lot. If we start doing budgets, it's one thing I learned. Is like, it takes a lot to pay people a lot. Like even at like $90,000, it's like me and Natalie working for free, and a lot of producers and people working for free. But you're trying to pay as many people as you can, but it's like really hard to kind of get top rates at such a low budget.
Yeah, and then it was things like because it was so low budget, we couldn't afford a proper electric department that was separate from grips. So I just had a gaffer who was also really good at gripping. It just didn't make sense to have a separate key grip and just to divide those and work union style. And so it was working out of one truck, and then having Kevin as my gaffer, and he was down. He's a good friend. He's gaffed a lot of for me before, and he's one of my good friends. So somebody like that who was down to play ball, and then we kind of had a rotating G&E department who were pretty much all swings, Spencer being one of them. So people who were just down to come in for a week or two, whatever they could. So that was really hard, on him. So yeah, things like that. Okay, some more questions. We'd love to hear about your experience shooting with Jim Cummings recently. Big fan of Thunder Road. So The Wolf of Snow Hollow. I think there was a press release today about kind of the first images. So it's going to be coming out in theaters October 9th. That was also a really cold shoot. We shot that last winter in Utah, near kind of outside of Park City. And it was wild. That was my first time working with Jim and just with a director who was also the lead. So that was a little tricky, just kind of like getting to that workflow. Jim likes to work with a creative director who like comes in as kind of like just his second set of eyes, basically like watching monitor while he's on camera. But yeah, a lot of big like snowy night exteriors in the middle of the woods, and I can't say too much about it, but you'll see it all soon. Hardest laugh you had during production? Oh my God, there were so many. That was the good thing. Like it was just seriously just a magical set every day. What were some of the funny things? I mean, the boat driver, so the guy on camera the fisherman who brings Gal to Pop's houseboat, fell in the water one day.
It wasn't that funny because it was like the water temperature was like 30 degrees. So.
Yeah, Danny Madden. What else? I don't know. Everybody just had such a great attitude, and just like, it was like everyone knew, just had a good time and laughed and cut up, but then knew when it turned off and was just like focused and got down to business. Our sound department was really funny. It was. No, we had a lot of laughs.
Things are going well when people like the sound department.
Yeah, they were a lively bunch.
The sound department's not the pain in the ass of the production, and things are going well.
What ISO did you rate camera? I think most for the blue hour scenes. I think I did do 1600. I don't know if I did. It's been so long. I don't know if it's for every blue hour scene. Probably. But 800 the rest of the time. Did you shoot at all with an easy rig or entirely shoulder? I would say like
Shoulder.
95% shoulder, which is what I prefer. So if I had to get particularly lower, then I would do easy rig, or like higher if it's like an awkward angle, tilting down for a long time. It would be easy rig, but I just feel better when it's like a part of me on me. I feel like I'm a better operator on my shoulder, especially when I'm like tracking with actors and walking around.
You had to move around a lot.
Yeah. Talked a little bit about the LUT you made, but what's the process like for actually making it? Do you need test footage to work from? Yes. So I did shoot some footage that I sent to Alan, along with that photo and then other reference material, and just lit it. I think I just used natural light and just like, it wasn't in the houseboat, but it was at where we were, our kind of base camp house, and just kind of maybe use some negative fill or something, or just shaped it in a way that I knew would be similar, and yeah, sent that to him, and then he did a pass, and then I think I had one round of notes, and then sent that back to him, and he tweaked it a little bit, and then yeah, and then it was done. So it was pretty easy.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, yeah, thank you both for doing this, chatting about it. Super fun film. It's beautiful. I think, Brian, for your debut, it's pretty impressive. So congrats to you for sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that will wrap us up. Thanks everyone else, all the members here. We'll unmute you all. I don't know if I can unmute you all, but thanks for everyone for coming to join us for the first one. We'll announce the next talk at some point. Mike Reyes maybe can lead it up with his G&E crew, his keys, and we'll do it again. So thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Awesome.
This was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks y'all.
Bye.
You have a good night.